And we do have a quorum. We have 6 voting members, so we do have a quorum. So, gonna call the August 1st Londonderry Utilities Committee meeting to order. We are in the Musso Conference Room at Town Hall. And first order of business, I'd like to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for everybody in the conference room, if there is an emergency, we have 2 emergency exits. Just go to the nearest outside exit and wait outside until our police or fire department instruct us to do something other than that. So we open up the meeting initially with public comment, and I see no members of the public present tonight, so we will move on from that. And we'll get right into the Londonderry Community Choice Aggregation Program. We have Bart Fromuth and Stuart Ormsby presenting tonight. Bart is the big man at Freedom Energy Logistics, and Stuart is with Colonial Power Group. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And just to kind of give you a little bit of background about us and what we're going to be doing tonight. So we're a new committee in town. We've been in business for 6 months now. And one of the things that we're tasked to do is to, so just put them right here, Chris. Thank you. And we'll get those out. Appreciate it. I left the name tags at home for everybody. But one of the things that we're tasked to do is to take a look at any energy-related issues, water-related issues, any public utility-related issues, and provide advice and guidance to both the town manager and to the town council. Now, one of the things that had been happening in the town is there was a community aggregation power committee. The committee was disbanded back earlier this year, and the responsibilities that were put under that committee have been transferred over to us. So we're going to, at some point in time, make a determination as to how we see community power aggregation going forward. We'll make that recommendation to both the town manager and to the town council, and we'll see where it goes. It's a big topic, and
Sure.
I understand that. I think we're kind of in our infancy. Most of us are. There's been a few people who have been involved in this topic for a while. But other than that, we may come up with some very, interesting questions, and I think it's going to be a good conversation tonight.
Sure.
And one of the things I would like to mention to the committee is, so we do have a presentation that Stuart and Bart are going to be giving us, and then I would also like to have a discussion on the contracts that are in place right now that you
Sure.
have with the town.
Yep.
Okay, great. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if not, you have control. There's a remote control on the desk there to forward and reverse the slides.
Okay. All right, great. Well, first, thank you for inviting us to come speak with you tonight. We've been working with the town of Londonderry since late 2019 on the topic of community choice aggregation. So I guess before we get into our slides, just give you a brief history of our relationship with the town and how things have evolved over the last 3.5 years here. So I served in the legislature from 2014 to 2018, and because of my background in energy, was involved in many energy policy related issues. And so I was approached by Cliff Below back in 2018 timeframe to help with some legislation once I was out of office, focused on bringing community choice aggregation, similar to what the model that they have down in Massachusetts, here to the state of New Hampshire. So I was one of the participating authors in SB 286, which is the initial enabling legislation that passed in 2019. And at that point in time, we thought that the program would move rather quickly. And then a worldwide pandemic had other things to say about that, happening shortly into 2020. Then I was working with the town manager at the time, Kevin Smith, to request some information from Eversource, the local utility here, information that we needed to go compile to start to move forward with an aggregation here in Londonderry. When we furnished that request to Eversource pushed back on that request, even though we felt we were entitled to that information via 286. Eversource said that they had privacy concerns that were not addressed by the underlying legislation. That then turned into an unofficial docket that opened at the New Hampshire PUC in late 2020. That lasted for about a year and then morphed into an official docket to promulgate rules surrounding community choice aggregation. And those rules, I believe, were wrapped up probably September of last year, finalized last year. So as I mentioned, things were delayed as a result of COVID, but you're seeing now, some 3.5 years after enactment of 286, the first communities in New Hampshire are beginning to launch with their aggregations. We've got some aggregations out in the western part of the state with Keene and Swansea and a few other towns. Nashua has launched as part of the CPCNH grouping, and we hope to see a few more towns launch before the close of 2023. So, as I mentioned, we've had a couple different folks that we've worked with at Londonderry. There was a prior iteration of this committee that we worked with briefly. Worked with Town Manager Kevin Smith and John Farrell, and then Mike Malaguti when he came into to the town manager's position. And so we're happy to be back and to work with all of you and answer any questions you might have. So I just wanted to turn it over to Stuart so that he could run you through our slide presentation. And please don't hesitate to ask any questions throughout the presentation if you have them. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Mike Malaguti had hoped to be here tonight, but he had a conflict, so
Okay.
he sends his apologies.
Thank you. So the core opportunity for a community choice aggregation program, the great thing about it is you're leveraging sort of the buying power of a large group of consumers, and it really provides a good alternative to the current choices that you have as residents. And one is you can take your power supply from Eversource, or you can take your chances with a direct competitive supply contract with a number of competitive suppliers. And for the typical residential consumer, those two options have not been terribly beneficial. And so with an aggregation program, in some ways you're doing what a lot of the large industrial and commercial customers have enjoyed for a number of years in New Hampshire. And because of their large load size, they've been able to do quite well relative to just traditional utility power supply. And so just by the sheer size of a buying group, and particularly the size of the town of Londonderry, banding your residents and small commercial customers together gets you into a market and gets you competitive pricing. Now, one key element that allows that to happen effectively is the opt-out nature of the program. That's a key ingredient, because if opt-in programs are difficult, quite honestly, to attract customers to opt in affirmatively and to attract the size load you need to attract suppliers. So, some of the benefits of community power aggregation, again, choice is number one. You're leveraging the large power supply opportunity of the community. Price stability is a key component that a lot of communities enjoy. You've all experienced yourselves personally the potential price swings of Eversource prices going every 6 months, which were quite dramatic, of course, this last winter. And that kind of price volatility, honestly, you probably should expect to see over the coming several years. There's nothing fundamentally changing in the market that's going to remove that potential for price volatility. But within a larger aggregation, you have the ability to contract for longer terms and get fixed prices for a longer period of time. Consumer protections is a big benefit. And here I'm contrasting to going directly with a competitive supplier, where in that instance you have no choice but to accept the contract terms and conditions of that supplier. And oftentimes those terms and conditions are not terribly favorable for the individual consumer. With aggregation programs, we on your behalf are going to put together contract terms that are only beneficial for the participating consumers. And if any supplier wants to serve your load, they have to accept those contract terms and conditions. So you're really kind of turning the tables on the suppliers. Fortunately, we've been, as Mark mentioned, Colonial Power Group has been doing these types of programs in Massachusetts now for about 16 years. We currently manage about 80 programs across the Commonwealth. So we have a lot of experience in administering these programs, including many years working with suppliers and contracts that work, number one, for the communities, but number two, contract terms and conditions that the suppliers also can work with, that they can accept. A lot of this has to do with local control. The benefit of the town of Londonderry working by itself and independently means you get to make all the decisions. You get to make the product selections. You get to make final sign-off on the terms and conditions of suppliers. And when I say product selections, oftentimes what communities will be interested in is offering more than just one product selection for their consumers. So you might have a product option that focuses on getting the lowest price possible. So that product might not have any additional renewable component above and beyond what the state mandates. But other residents in the community probably have interest in a product that offers some additional voluntary renewable product. And so that would be something that you can include as an optional product. And you might have a third option that's strictly 100% renewable. Those come at different prices, but it offers a nice selection for consumers who feel strongly with different products. This is entirely self-funded. There's no outlay required of the town itself. So any administrative costs are largely managed by Colonial Power and Freedom. There's a service fee for us to do that administrative work. And that fee is just added to the program price. Outside of that, again, no resource commitment on the part of the town. What we want to provide to the town of Londonderry is really a turnkey service where, if there's any issues with the program, we want that to come to us. We want to manage that for the town. We don't want, if a call happens to come in to the office here, we want to leave clear messages that just have the person call us at Colonial, have us deal with all those issues. We already touched on, that these aggregation programs are very effective in overcoming, call it the shortcomings of the direct competitive choice market. Some of those contracts I talked about with not terribly favorable terms for consumers. One of the key problems with those contracts is they might entice a consumer for initial low introductory rate, which granted is good for 6 months or so, and then and I'll put myself in the shoes of the consumer, as I stop paying attention to that power supply contract, all of a sudden the price increases by 30% per the terms of the contract, and because I'm busy doing other things, I don't perhaps realize it for another 3 months down the road. So it's the kind of thing where the direct market choice option can work for a consumer, but you have to be really attentive, and unfortunately too many of us, like myself, are not attentive enough. And so this doesn't interfere with that option for consumers. Consumers who like that option and want to continue to pursue that absolutely can. This, again, just provides an option for consumers. Slide here just kind of talks through the approval process. Just real quickly, there are a number of steps that need to take place pursuant to state statute, and those are mentioned here. There's a requirement for 2 public hearings, a requirement for the town council at the appropriate time to sign off on the plan. So that this just kind of steps through some of those requirements. Once the program's has been approved by the Utilities Commission and the town decides, yes, they want to move forward with this, This slide just steps through some of the services that Colonial would provide on behalf of the town, like I mentioned, in a turnkey manner. All pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, one of the big emphases here is to do all we can around consumer education, making sure that we're using all types of mechanisms to make consumers aware of this opportunity. Again, in part because of the opt-out nature of the programs, any kind of reach out we can possibly do, we want to do. So we'll be up here as many times as you need us to be, doing public information sessions. I think one key constituency that you'd recognize is seniors in the community. That's always a group that we want to try to reach out and connect with. If there's an active senior center that we can do one or more program information there, we want to do that. Again, all will make use of any kind of outreach that we can think of and that you can think of. We'll try to do it all. A few things to touch on, because this gets into some of the frequently asked questions that we have from committees and town officials. Explain to me who's keeping the lights on. I mean, does this aggregation take the place of Eversource? And no, it does not. Eversource continues to do the wires and poles and customer service. They're doing the metering and so forth. This is simply a power supply arrangement. It's really a financial contract. You have a supplier who's guaranteeing a rate for the supply piece. Eversource will continue to field all calls with outages and keep the lights on. Again, so customers would be directed to contact Eversource in the case of power outages and metering issues and so forth. Importantly, Eversource will continue to do the billing. We think it's creates less customer confusion if we have Eversource continue to do the billing, even though an aggregation program has the option under the law to do direct billing. Our belief is having the consumer receive two bills just adds too much unnecessary confusion. So we do single billing through Eversource. The only thing that changes on the Eversource bill when you have an active aggregation, it's just a single line item. So instead of that line item saying Eversource Energy Service, it would be replaced with Londonderry Aggregation Program or something to that effect. Any utility services that consumers currently receive from Eversource, for example, any consumers getting some financial assistance through their energy assistance program, that would continue. There's no interruption in that. If they have budget billing with Eversource, that would continue. Nothing interferes with those types of things. Energy efficiency programs would still be available through Eversource. Net metering is a topic that we frequently get questions around. Now here, unfortunately, there's some challenges, and this is broad-based. This isn't unique to our administering the program. There's some work to be done, let's put it that way, in terms of net metering with the commission. There is a docket open right now where all of us are actively involved, ourselves, including the Consumer Power Coalition, trying to make some improvements in the net metering regulations and tariffs. So without getting into the weeds of the details, right now we're advising that any consumers who have solar and are participating in the net metering program through Eversource, that Londonderry not automatically treat them as opt-out customers. And the reason is, presently, more often than not, that customer is better situated remaining on Eversource because the credits that Eversource can provide to net metering consumers is going to exceed what any of the programs would be able to provide. Again, we hope to rectify that in time where it's a more even playing field, but it's going to take some time to sort that out. And just lastly on net metering, any net metering consumer would have the option to try to opt in, but we would probably engage with them and try to have a conversation to make sure they understand sort of the pros and cons of coming into the program or not. Consumers are going to ask, well, if I participate in the program, am I guaranteed to always beat the Eversource rate? Are savings guaranteed under this program? That's certainly our objective, but I can't sit here and say we can promise that. It's going to depend, and particularly where, as you know, Eversource's rate changes every 6 months. If the town of Londonderry elects to enter into, say, a 3-year contract for a fixed rate, it's possible there could be times when the Londonderry rate is a little bit below the Eversource rate for a period of time. But what we're always trying to do, generally speaking, is to, over a period of time, to do better than the Eversource rate. Otherwise, why do this, right? And that's the conclusion of the prepared slides. We'd love to take any and all questions you have. Yes.
Well, my initial question is, can you tell me the difference between your two companies?
Sure.
Sure, yeah. So when we first engaged in bringing community choice aggregation to New Hampshire, it was largely theoretical. No one had ever done it in the state of New Hampshire before. There were some smaller opt-in aggregations where people had to sign up themselves, but nothing on the scale or the size of opt-out aggregations like they had in Massachusetts. So I've known Stuart for over 10 years. He worked with two major suppliers in the region, First Point Power and TransCanada. And as we continued to cross paths at the PUC during the docket process, we decided to team up and join forces. So my firm, Freedom Energy Logistics, is a 40-person shop based out of Auburn, New Hampshire. We serve a lot of the major users of electricity here in the state of New Hampshire, one of the largest consultants, energy procurement consultants in all of New England. And so we had staffed up to provide services for CCA, for community choice aggregation. And because of the delays, I had a number of people that were just kind of sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And so because Colonial Power Group was already providing significant services down in Massachusetts, it made sense for us to team up. And now we're a kind of a joint venture, if you will, into the CCA marketplace here in New Hampshire as well as the state of Rhode Island.
So pretty much you do the same thing, but you're doing it in New Hampshire, and you partnered up with Colonial because they have experience in doing this.
Correct. And so, when you're looking at we had the first couple launches, and if I don't know if you read about what happened with the Community Power Coalition, they had a launch with Nashua and some other surrounding towns, and they're doing this for the first time, and there were a number of hiccups that happened as a result of that. So a lot of customers weren't enrolled on time. There were some issues with the supplier that they chose, Calpine, and so there's a big fight afoot at the PUC right now. And so having someone that's done this for over a decade in Colonial Power Group and served the likes of the city of Boston, the city of Lowell, they just signed up the city of Springfield, really brings a lot of boots on the ground, real world experience to this new marketplace in New Hampshire. And so they're a great partner for us to work with.
Okay.
Could you be a little more specific? In other words, who's going to do what? I mean, there's the agreement that we have with you specifies, a bunch of tasks.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand who's going to do those tasks, who's going to negotiate with providers. I can't really sort out who's doing what here.
Specifically with regard to production of the CCA or negotiation of the rates with suppliers, certainly everything having to do with production of the community choice aggregation here in Londonderry. Colonial Power Group has the customer service office in place. They have the public education tools that they utilize. We're certainly going to bring our experience and our expertise in terms of negotiating with suppliers. I also handle a lot of the regulatory stuff for the partnership. I handle the legislative initiatives as well. We had HB 315 that got passed about a year and a half ago now, which provided a new complement to the community choice aggregation program called purchase of receivables. Was a huge issue with the state of New Hampshire moving forward with the community choice aggregation programs, because even though we passed SB 286, a lot of the states that have flourishing marketplaces for CCA have guaranteed receivables for the suppliers that serve those markets. And once we had passed 286, a lot of the complaints that we got from the supplier marketplace was, that's great, we're not really interested in serving New Hampshire though because we don't want to take on the credit risk. And the credit risk is a big deal because these are universal access programs, meaning by law, you have to take on all customers regardless of their credit history, credit background. And that's a significant risk scenario for the suppliers. So they had essentially kind of passed on the first iteration of the marketplace, even had rules been promulgated at that point in time. So I headed up a team that went to the legislature and worked with people like Representative Doug Thomas and others at the State House to get purchase of receivables put into the law here under HB 315, and we were successful in doing that, and that's helped to move the program forward. And all of the suppliers that are operating in this marketplace right now are utilizing that feature to move forward. So essentially what that means is the utility has the ability to turn off your lights for non-payment. Third-party supplier does not. So if Constellation is serving your home and you choose not to pay, they have no recourse in that scenario to get their money back. So the legislature felt that, well, if the utility has the ability to turn off the lights, they have kind of the ultimate collections tool, and therefore, why don't we have the suppliers pay a small fee to the utilities for bill collection, and the utilities will guarantee the credit of every customer in the program, and that's opened the door for a lot more marketplace activity than there would have been otherwise. So that's an example of my role in this process.
Suppliers today in New Hampshire are guaranteed their payment.
Correct. As a result of that legislation, yes.
So our existing agreement, I think, is with Freedom Energy,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So how do we have a legal obligation to Colonial Power?
So back when Kevin Smith was still the town manager, we had formally approached the town of Londonderry about adding Colonial Power Group to our relationship. And at that point in time, Kevin Smith had agreed to allow Colonial Power Group to enter into a subcontract role with Freedom Energy Logistics.
So does Freedom Energy have the authority or the power today to contract with somebody like Community Power Coalition?
I guess technically that would be possible under the agreement with you, not possible under our agreement with Colonial Power Group, and frankly, not something that I would do. I think our product is a superior product to Community Power Coalition.
Could you elaborate on that? Why is that?
So one of the features of Community Power Coalition, I think, that is widely overlooked is the fact that they charge reserve margins as part of their power rate. So if you take a look at the first rate that they launched in April, it was around 15 cents a kilowatt hour. At that point in time, the market was only at 8 cents and change in terms of the product that we would have offered for that same 3-month duration. They charged 8 cents as a reserve feature to build a pool of money for their communities. One of the things that they aspire to do is to become a third-party supplier at some point in time. That means that your community is taking significant financial risk as a result of that portfolio. With ours, it's a completely risk-off transaction. It's turnkey, and there's only 1/10 of a cent per kilowatt hour that you ever get charged as a result of our fee, on top of the baseline rate that you get from suppliers. So every time the coalition comes up with a rate, and depending upon when you enter the coalition, you could be paying a reserve margin through your residents that communities that come in subsequent to the coalition never have to pay. And so a lot of the communities that entered into the first round with the coalition paid 8 cents a kilowatt hour on 64,000 households. 8 cents a kilowatt hour, that's double what the bill would have otherwise been. And again, that's to pay for the infrastructure they have in place. They have a staff that they're trying to build, and they're trying to build a forward portfolio. And it may or may not be successful. It's modeled after what they do in California. California, as you know, though, has a much more significant population than the state of New Hampshire. One county in California has more people in it, more ratepayers than the entire state of New Hampshire. So in that context, if you're trying to build a third-party supplier doing the same things as an NRG or a Constellation or an EDF, you might have 13 or 14 or 15 million ratepayers to spread out those costs and those risks amongst. But when you're trying to do it, and their max load might be, if they have all the communities that are currently signed up, about 220,000 ratepayers, the math doesn't add up, and I don't think that program is going to be long for this universe.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
How many communities are you serving or providing service to in New Hampshire currently?
So right now, we have 3 communities that are under agreement, and we have 3 more communities that are looking over our agreement and about to join.
Would you care to describe who they are?
So right now, we've got Lincoln, Londonderry, and Hampton all signed up under our agreements. We've got Epping, Northampton, and Merrimack as the other 3.
So when you say under agreement, does that mean that they're utilizing this power purchase agreement, or is that you have a contract and you're in process of,
We have a consulting agreement, and so
Same thing we have, right?
Yeah.
So how many communities in New Hampshire are you buying power for at this point? Or have you consummated the agreement?
it's important to note that the first CCAs have only recently launched. So this is a very new program. So we have no communities right now, but Lincoln has passed a resolution on their town meeting day, as has Hampton.
And both Lincoln and Hampton, we've already taken them through the regulatory process, so their plans have been approved by the commission. And so we're
A
just,
couple steps past us, but
Yes.
yeah. It's,
do you have, can you provide maybe 3 to 5-ish years of data from communities that you've consummated the relationship with, and then show that this is what the rate is without this contract, and this is what the rate that your customers are paying? Can you show that for, you mentioned, I think it was Lowell and Boston and Springfield down in Massachusetts. Can you show that you signed a contract in Springfield, the base rate in Springfield for non-customers is X, and your customers are paying Y, and then show that for like the last 3 to 5 years?
and you're saying relative to the utility rates, you mean?
Yeah, I guess what your customers are paying and what the delta would be, or the difference would be, if they were not working with you.
For an opt-out household, in other words, right?
Yeah. Am I asking that question correctly?
Yeah,
I'm
just,
trying to capture how much value you're adding to the communities.
yeah, and just to be clear, you're saying compared to what that customer might have paid if they were with the utility company?
Or if the customers that are not part of your agreement with you, with the
I
utility.
think it'd be tough
I might
to.
be asking the question incorrectly.
First, I think, taking a look at where the market went this past winter, you had rates, certainly in Massachusetts, went as high as 36 cents a kilowatt hour for a household. And anybody that was on an aggregation at that point in time that had signed in the COVID years, 2021, 2022, was probably paying somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So the results are going to be heavily skewed in favor of the aggregation for that period of time.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So can you show, you mentioned the 9 cents and the 32 cents. Can you show that, so for these communities, the communities that had your agreement, they were paying 7 or 8 or 10, whatever. And the communities that weren't were paying 9, and then it ramped up to 32, and then it might have ramped down. So in these situations, they paid a whole heck of a lot more.
Yeah, so I think that a comparison of the utility would be appropriate. It's just hard to gauge anybody that's not with the utility, not with the aggregation, what they would have paid. There's no publicly available data to suggest.
Well, if the utility is the base rate, then can you provide that and then show that this is what the utility is charging, and then it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
am I asking the question correctly?
Yeah, no, I understand. I want to
How
make
much are you
sure.
saving us is what I'm trying to get my arms
So
around.
we're looking for data points, basically, that says, I don't care if you do it by month, by quarter, whatever, the following community had X amount of residents and they paid this amount. If they were not with you, they would have paid this amount.
Sure.
Data points.
Compare it to the utility.
Yeah,
Right, that's not it.
yeah.
You'll
No,
be
no.
fine comparing to the utility.
Okay, and that's fine. And again, just to be fully transparent, that data is going to be heavily skewed in favor of the aggregation just because of the years we've just passed, right? So
Are you complaining?
I just don't,
Sorry.
I don't want to set expectations that, they saved,
Yeah, right, it's going to show hundreds of millions of dollars in savings.
We do understand.
We understand.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and not just like the aggregate, the town of Boston is saving $100 million, but, what is the rate? Is it go from 32 to 7? Are your customers paying 7 cents a kilowatt hour and they would have paid 23 cents a kilowatt hour?
Right.
So you know, that is more important to us, or more informative to us than this whole city of Boston saved $100 million. Although that's great, good for you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
How old is your oldest community in terms of when, because what I'm wondering is, you know, Jeff's asking for 3 to 5 years. Do you have 5 years of that kind of data?
Yeah, for some community, I mean, I think our first community was the city of Marlborough in Massachusetts. I think they've been, some 12 years ago or so, they got underway.
All right, so if you gave us 5 years, we would have pre-COVID years.
Yeah.
And we could, you know, make the
More data
mental-
is better.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
could provide 10 years, that's great. I like.
Yeah,
a lot
my
of data.
understanding is this aggregation concept occurred in Massachusetts well before New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Sure, I understand.
They've been operating under that environment.
Yeah, I understand.
I've got a series of quick questions for you.
Sure.
How many customers Stuart, do you currently provide power to, roughly?
Yeah, it's about 500,000 in Massachusetts.
Who's your go-to power supplier?
There's no single go-to. So anytime we're doing,
Top three?
excuse me?
Give me a top three.
Well, yeah, so the suppliers that we're actively working with, Constellation, Direct Energy, Nextera, Dynegy, and First Point Power.
All right, thank you. You have 500,000 customers. What do you have for sort of a customer service capability so that if we implemented this in the town of Londonderry and everybody had 1,000 questions, they could call? How's that work?
Right. So the kind of two numbers that are prominently featured in the materials. Number one would be the Colonial Power's phone number, and so we have a call center that's flexible to spin up in terms of whatever volume of calls we may be getting at any time. And then in addition to that, and this is more of a regulatory requirement, the supplier's phone number is always prominently featured as well. And so we'd be perfectly happy if all the calls come to us, but sometimes it goes to the supplier.
Okay, and you offer options for solar or semi-solar or some whatever.
Yep.
What percentage of the customers really choose those options? I mean, are they a high percentage, a low percentage, or what?
Right, and so the quick answer to that is, let me back up. An important feature, and I think you'll understand this right away, is that the town would select. So let's say you select 3 products to offer your residents, right? You're also going to have, you as a committee would have to decide which of those 3 products do you want to be the default or the standard product for the program, and that's the initial option that customers get put into if they don't opt out, right? So in Massachusetts, just as an example, there are different strategies. A number of the towns will select the lowest price option to be their standard program. Other communities that put a particular emphasis on renewable pick the one that's in the middle that has some amount of renewable power as sort of the standard product. And then customers are free to opt into one of the other options, which in my latter example could be to opt down to a lower price product that doesn't have
Roughly,
renewable.
if your default power is lowest power, what percentage goes to the other?
Yeah, so very small. I mean, it's in either direction, quite honestly, it might be less than 5%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share with this committee, for example, viewing of your customers, your website, if we were a customer of yours, what we could see, what was available to the community to look at?
Yeah, our website's out there for anyone to see. I can give you the link, and within our website, there's a tab for all of our customers, and so you can click on any of those communities.
Could you give us a little insight? Could you give us access to that, is my point?
Yeah, you have access today. It's not
Okay.
it's not proprietary. You can go in there and it's all publicly available information.
Okay. What's the worst type of complaints that you get?
The worst type.
It's probably the opt-out. There's a lot of people that, don't like the idea of the town making a decision for them. They feel as though that's, their home, their electricity, and the town shouldn't be entering them into a third-party supply contract. You know, the way that we try to handle those complaints and put it in perspective is when you move to the town of Londonderry and you get your first hookup, Eversource is your provider, whether you like it or not. And so we're just replacing Eversource now with the town of Londonderry as the default provider. And just like Eversource, you're free to come and go as you please. So if you move into Londonderry, you start on Londonderry Power for a month, you decide that you don't like it, you're free to leave on the next meter read date, similar to Eversource, without any type of a hassle or early termination fee. But that's certainly one of the top complaints that we get.
And in your purchase of power, give us your rough strategy. Are we talking a year, 2 years, 3 years? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, right, and it's going to depend largely in sort of market conditions at the time. So for example, when one of the early outcomes of COVID was power prices came down dramatically. And so there was an opportunity for all of our clients to lock in long-term, lock in a 8-cent, 9-cent rate for as long as possible. So we were making those types of recommendations going along. As we got into some of the more recent periods of time, late last year, and unfortunately some of our clients needed to recontract and they hadn't, and so they're in a similar boat as Eversource was, having to buy in a really high price environment. We're urging them to go short, not to lock in a 3-year rate at 18 cents or something horrific. So yeah, it's really depends on what the market's doing at the time.
Eversource's rates will change next February.
Yeah.
Can we get this done prior to that?
With your model of
Offer an option?
with your model of government, you have a significant advantage over some of the small towns that have to launch surrounding their town meeting day. With the town manager form of government that you have here, if the town council approved you to go forward, we'd be able to launch in a number of months after the plan was approved at the PUC, which takes about 60 days.
Right, because my understanding is Eversource has got to lock in the power supply for every 6 months. They don't have the option to go long-term.
Correct.
Wintertime, you never know what's going to happen, if it's a cold winter, so I expect those rates to go up. What I'm running through my head is can we position ourselves to offer an alternative to that and not have that rate increase hit our town?
If we moved with haste, there's a definite possibility we could meet a February deadline for that. And again, take a look at how Eversource does their procurement. It's not a knock on them. It's an alarm clock goes off every 6 months. Completely indifferent to what the market
That's
does.
regulatory driven, I understand.
Exactly. So.
All right, I'll let others ask questions. Go ahead.
I got one. So you mentioned, well, this was going on in Massachusetts, and at one time I lived in a town called Templeton. You might be familiar with it. The 70s actually did the same exact thing, and then later on they changed over to a municipality where they're both utility. Now they're small; they're around 4,000 customers at this time.
Yeah.
So the difference is you're the aggregate buyer for us, and Templeton is almost the same, but they're owned by the town. Is that sort of like the difference?
So Templeton's different in that they have no choice but to work with the lighting district in Templeton, right? So in this context, we're just another feature of a choice marketplace. So you have Londonderry Power, you have Eversource, and then you have third-party suppliers that anybody can call up and contract with at their leisure. So in that regard, there's more options here than there would be in Templeton.
Early adopters, it was pretty good. We had an all-electric house at one time.
Under this arrangement, is there anything that would preclude the town from becoming either a generator or a storage facility? In other words, could you procure power from Londonderry? From Londonderry's generation
Londonderry solar
facility?
farm, you mean?
Yeah, so I mean,
Say, for example, we put up
Londonderry
a solar
solar
farm and a battery facility. Are we able to, under that scenario, still have you managing our power, because we may not generate enough for the entire town, but more than we need for our municipal buildings? Can we sell that to you to, I mean, it sounds.
Yeah. So one of the great features of our program, and I think is a plus for us and would be a knock on our competitors, is the fact that because it's a local control model, there's no other communities that you have to confer with as to what you want to put in your plan or your power supply. So, for instance, Nashua has a number of hydro dams, and Nashua has a large voting presence in CPCNH. Because of that large voting presence, they can cram down onto other small towns, buying from Nashua's hydro assets if they wanted to. Londonderry would have to seek permission from other communities under CPCNH to essentially use Londonderry power into your program. So if you wanted to build a solar array above your transfer station or a capped landfill, you'd be able to do that, and then we would negotiate that as part of your third-party supply contract, whether it was Constellation or NextEra or whoever, that they had to procure the excess power from that landfill as a result of working with the town of Londonderry, and you would have total control over that.
So you were going to basically give us a sort of a bucket full of providers. I mean, depending on what our demand is and what you contract from a specific provider, or is it the case that for any particular contract period, we're going to have one provider?
So it depends. Typically speaking, you're going to have one provider that's going to have a number of options for you, right? So you might have Direct Energy, and then you might have option number one being your maximized savings rate for the town of Londonderry, and that'll be the opt-out rate. Then you might have two opt-in rates on top of that, also provided by Direct Energy. One might be, as Stuart mentioned, the 100% fully renewable, and that's going to have a cost premium associated with it. There might be a 50% renewable rate as well as option three. Those would be opt-in rates that the customer has to affirmatively let us know that they'd like to participate in that. Otherwise, they would get opted into, or they get moved into the default rate, the standard rate. So really, again, when you talk about local control and you guys are coming up with your municipal aggregation plan and where you want to prioritize where you buy your power from. Do you want to maximize savings, maximize renewables, meet somewhere in the middle? The most choice that you're going to make is around that default rate, because that's where the majority of your residents are going to end up and remain, as we found in other communities.
So getting back to the Londonderry Power Company,
Sure.
assuming we have we go into the program, next year you're going to negotiate a contract with, say, Energy
Yep.
for all of our power for whatever period of time is financially the best deal. 3 years from now, the Londonderry solar array comes online. How will that integrate into the contract that was, say, going for 10 years with Energy? You see what I'm saying?
So we
How do
wouldn't.
we have that flexibility to?
So we wouldn't necessarily interrupt any contracts in place, but when we think about long-term planning for Londonderry, it takes a couple of years to build a solar facility. So if we knew that was coming, we might shorten our next procurement to match up with when that solar facility came online, and then we would go and basically marry the parties at the conclusion of the current contract, so the next contract featured procurement that was inclusive of overproduction from your solar array. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So we really do need to have a pretty good crystal ball.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's allowances that we can build into a contract, but these would be features that as we move forward, if this was something that Londonderry wanted to do, we would make sure that we're bringing suppliers to the table that we're willing to negotiate with that. And you might have a few megawatts of production above the transfer station, right? But when you take a look at how much load the town of Londonderry can serve as a result of your residents, it's pretty significant. You guys are about the 5th or 6th largest user population-wise in the state. So Londonderry would be a serious player in the community choice aggregation marketplace, and would have some real terms that you could enforce on the suppliers to utilize if they wanted to work with you. So
So you have 500,000 customers. Can you give me a sense of the number of calls you get on an annual basis from those customers?
It's not a lot, actually, and which may be surprising, but I guess I can't give you a specific number. But we've been sort of, with our experience in the potential for ebbs and flows of customer calls, we've always been able to manage it with no problem.
And given the town of Londonderry, and you might have some idea of what this load might be based on your past experience, what do you think current prices you could get for us? Not to hold you to it.
Yeah, oh, well, I mean, so pricing right now, and so of course I've got Massachusetts on the brain. So I mean, right now
I mean, if
so
we're looking at let's say a November start, right? Realistically, because we wouldn't be able to hit anything this summer, this fall. So November, December timeframe, we'd probably be looking at a 12-month only, right? Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of around 10 cents a kilowatt hour would be where we'd end up at.
I want to go back to a question that Mike asked about who are we dealing with. The contracts that I've seen that have been signed by people in the town deal with Freedom.
Yes.
So, but then you're saying if there's issues or whatever, if customers have issues, they are to call Colonial.
Yeah, so in terms of how the plan is going to be presented to the town, it's going to be a customer service helpline, right? And so CPG, Colonial Power Group, is going to handle that aspect of the relationship. But when we send out our opt-out notices to your residents town-wide, they're going to have the phone number for the helpline from us as the aggregator, which is going to get directed to Colonial Power Group, but they're also going to have supplier contact information. And one thing that we've noticed throughout all the aggregations is the majority of the phone calls actually do go towards the supplier. But again, when we are posting on your website, we're posting on the opt-out cards, they're going to get the helpline for Colonial Power Group, which is, again, part of the service that we're jointly providing to the town.
Is your call centers based in the United States?
yes.
Thank you.
Will you change that subcontracted relationship with Colonial Power? Will that maintain, or will that change if we go forward?
No,
I mean, it's odd because I don't want to know your gross sales or anything, but it sounds like the smaller entity is subcontracted a much larger entity. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not to get into, size, but my firm is 43 employees. Colonial is smaller than that. Again, in terms of how the relationship unfolded, it was a relationship that I think worked out for both parties and our customers because, like I said before, this was a theoretical product in the state of New Hampshire. There was no one with on-the-ground experience with aggregation. And so whether it's myself, CPC&H, Standard Power, none of us had served in aggregation before. And throughout the process at the PUC, we were working together, and it seemed like it was a good fit. And because of the delays, we had staffed up, to handle it ourselves. But by and large, I think this has worked out a lot better for us and our customers because we are bringing a team in here with significant experience, and experience matters, especially when you're launching something for the first time in the state. And again, I would just point you to some of the recent newspaper articles about what a bit of chaos the CPC&H launch has caused, and that's something that we're confident could have been avoided had they had some experience in this area.
So let me throw out a parallel, see
Yeah.
if it fits. You tell me if it fits. Art, you're the general engineering firm who might design a wastewater treatment plant for the town of Londonderry, okay? Determine the loads, the needs, and all that, so forth and so on. Stewart is the actual construction company. He handles the execution of the project and all the things that would happen after that. It's kind of how Stewart's the backroom operations is the way I look at it. Whereas you're the front end strategic regulatory.
I think that would be a fair comparison.
I'm trying to put it in terms that maybe we were more accustomed to seeing.
I just look at it as
Okay,
a
but-
service offering, and this is their two departments. That's all I look at it
You
as.
can look at it that way as well.
Yeah, but we don't have a direct relationship with Colonial. We have a direct relationship with Freedom. And Freedom has the partnership. That's all behind your scenes.
No, I think that was changed, right?
Oh,
Yeah, again, and I know, and I apologize because I know the history here is somewhat hard to follow. And you know, we did have a presentation to the town manager 2 years ago about forming this relationship. We made our proposal as to why we thought this was a good fit for the town of Londonderry. That was accepted by the town manager at the time. I know he's not here to comment on that anymore, but you know, we have gone and explained to Mr. Malaguti and his team, and they understand the relationship and have accepted it as well. I understand the origins of it, but it was, like I said, it was kind of a relationship that was born after we entered into our contract. But we did make, I think, a compelling argument as to why this suits the needs of Londonderry, and that was accepted by the town of Londonderry, and I think you're going to get premium service as a result of these two parties coming together to serve you.
But we have no guarantee that your relationship will endure, right? I mean, our agreement is with Freedom Energy, and we're gonna sign another agreement as a part of our aggregation plan, I assume. Maybe we won't, maybe we're gonna not, just go with this. But, you know, you could fire Colonial Power tomorrow. Our agreement is with you, right?
I can't fire, we have a partnership agreement between the two firms that goes beyond the current contract that we have in place with Londonderry. But just to set you at ease, if you want to do a scenario like some of our other towns have done and contract with the two of us, that we're willing to do that. You know, I just want to, you know, make sure that everyone here feels comfortable with the relationship. You know, obviously, you know, always plan for divorce, as they say, right? So, you know, if that makes Londonderry more at ease with the relationship, you know, we'd be willing to take a look at that.
I
So,
think what's confusing some people is they recently got the contract review.
Yeah.
That was the first document. What they didn't know about was 2 years later, the meetings, the agreements, what you offered the town, why this is better service agreement, this is front end, this is back end. And, you know, be real simple, you combine the companies and make it one contract. To me, it doesn't make any difference. I know some of the history, so.
Well,
yeah,
the-
I mean, I saw
Yeah,
some
the-
history too.
I think the point is this,
Going
that,
by that
that,
contract.
you know, there was a discussion 3 years ago with the former town manager, all well and good, you know. And the town manager at that time was comfortable, that's fine too. But we don't have that agreement or even that discussion, you're just bringing it up now, okay? So,
with all due respect, I'm not just bringing it up now.
Well-
This committee was recently formed. I've brought this up about 10 times in Londonderry and with a new town manager as well, and it's something that he's also accepted, and I just don't want you to think this is the first time anybody's hearing about
well,
this.
it's the first time we've seen it, okay, I think.
And I'm respectful of that. I'm not trying to say that, you know, you personally have heard about this, but in terms of our long history with Londonderry, you know, this is something that has come up numerous times. And each time we've successfully allayed the concerns of the committees or staff or the town council, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it again, and you know.
Well, we're trying to understand this, okay?
Sure.
And so, I mean, some of the stuff, it's new to me, in regards to Colonial. I mean, I understand, they're a nice group, they're working together with you, they can potentially work together with the town, all well and good, but I think we have a contract with you, right? That we don't have with Colonial, and we're just kind of wondering legally where we're at.
Well, under the contract, I am allowed to subcontract with permission of the town, and that is what I've done.
Okay, all right.
So, Bart, I'd like to go back a couple of slides where you get into the process timeline.
Sure.
If you could kind of walk through that, because I think one of the bigger questions I have is what has to happen to get a program like this off and running?
Sure.
You know, we're still in the infant stages, and I'll
Sure.
say that, you know, but there's a lot of steps that have to happen between now and implementation.
So I think in terms of where we've left off, as you noted at the beginning of the meeting, we had an aggregation committee that was formed and then disbanded. So that would be really the first place that we would want to start. You are now, the utility commission are going, or the utilities committee are going to be that aggregation committee. So we would want to put together and work with you to develop your plan. And then once that plan gets to a comfort level amongst the committee members, we would present to the town council for approval. Once the town council approves that plan, then we submit to the New Hampshire DOE for approval, and that process takes about 60 days. After the DOE approves that plan, we are in a scenario where we can start looking at, we want to get data from the utilities probably at that point in time. But then we're in a scenario where we start taking a look at markets and getting numbers for us to think about. You know, plans in place. We've decided what kind of renewable inclusion we want. We want savings, so on and so forth. What do we want for our opt-in programs, if any? And then at that point in time, we have another conversation where the town, even after going through all that, it's still an optional move forward. So if the rates aren't looking good at a certain point in time, Londonderry might decide to hold off for a period of time. We could get to February, as we discussed, and the market could shoot up again. There could be a cold winter happening here or in Europe, causing significant spike in natural gas demand, which would lead prices to go high. And we might decide to hold off until spring or summer. So I just want to say there are certain things that are kind of outside of our control. Even if we move at warp speed, we're kind of putting ourselves in position to hopefully take advantage of market opportunities as they present themselves.
So when you go out and procure power supply, are you procuring it just for the town of Londonderry?
Yeah.
Or are you taking Londonderry, putting it with your other 80 towns?
Yeah, no, just Londonderry by itself.
Okay.
But wouldn't it make sense to go to a provider and say, I have 500,000 customers here. Let's talk a good rate.
Yeah, actually, no. And the reason, so honestly, the community that has the most difficult time getting competitive pricing is the city of Boston. When you think about aggregation programs, the size is a bit of a myth, meaning there are some really, really tall, small communities that we serve out in Western Mass, and I'm talking about a few hundred people. Yes, those size communities we will sort of band together into larger buying groups. A town the size of Londonderry is a very large load for a supplier. And if you start adding more load to that, it becomes that much more risky for the supplier, and guess what? Their price goes up. So you're actually in a very good size position to, number one, warrant competitive pricing, but not too big to scare away some of those suppliers.
And do you make contracts with multiple suppliers at the same time? Or one group?
The town of Londonderry would have one supplier at a time, if I understood your question.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
question is, would you opt it out for two suppliers if they got together?
No, it'd be one supplier.
And you get different products, like you mentioned, the different scaling of renewables, you can get that from the same.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the most efficient way to do it. And again, it ties back to one of the earlier questions about how many customers honestly opt into those programs. It's so small, it's more efficient for the same supplier to provide all the products.
Does each supplier individually have to meet the renewable portfolio standard? Or
Yeah.
is it,
Yeah.
they do?
Yeah, state mandate, they all have to meet that.
If we want to get a better understanding of your financial stability, would you share with us your audited financial statements and so forth and so on?
So, I mean, we don't bear any market risk. I mean, the supplier bears all the market risk. I mean, we're a consultancy group, and we provide administrative services for a fee. So there's no financial exposure to the town by having us do the administrative work.
But if you disappeared,
answered my question.
if you disappeared, what would happen then? Just say something, say both of your companies disappeared, theoretically.
So theoretically, if both of our companies disappeared, that would not interrupt the program in place. So you have a third-party supplier that's chosen. So let's say we go with a 3-year deal with Constellation. Colonial Power and Freedom get hit by a large meteorite in year 2. The program would still continue unabated into that third year, and at that third year, you could go and hire CPCNH or Standard Power to come in here and pick up the slack where we left off.
So, same thing with financial bankruptcy, right?
I'm still waiting for my answer, if they're willing or not.
No.
So I'd like to go back to the plan, the program plan. Have you found that program plans are pretty standard across towns, or are they custom? I'm sure they're customized to a certain degree for each community you're working with.
Right, so we've developed sort of our own unique plan, so we didn't copy what the coalition did or Standard Power did. So we have our own plan, but I think more to your question is that what we would propose to do is leverage the work that we've done with Lincoln and Hampton already, because like I mentioned earlier, they've already gone through the commission process. It's already been approved by the commission, so we'd want to, leverage that, take advantage of it. And I think, a lot of the content of the plan is written to meet statutory requirements. So we'd advise, leave that alone. There's certain sections that are more tailored toward, things that the town may wish to do. That can be your sandbox to make it unique.
So would you be able to share the plans you put together for Hampton and for Lincoln? I think if we got those out and people could take a look at those, I think that'd help. answer
Absolutely.
A lot of questions.
Definitely,
Yep.
yeah.
And why'd they pick you versus Community Power?
Similar to Londonderry, Lincoln and Hampton are clients of mine. Epping's a client of mine. Merrimack's a client of mine in terms of traditional procurement for the town needs. So we work already with those towns on the municipal buildings, their campus load, if you will. And so that's how we develop those relationships. And again, I've been kind of out there from an early time talking about the potential for this program. And once the bill passed, there was some excitement surrounding it. So I work with Londonderry, but I work with Londonderry right now on a virtual net metering contract where I provide virtual net metering rebates tied to hydro generators. So the town of Londonderry reaps a financial benefit from that program. So.
Do you know, I confess my ignorance here, who does the buying for Londonderry? I know we're not doing the standard, default rate with Eversource. It's coming from, at least the school district is.
I believe UMG currently has the contract for consulting services for Londonderry. That's been in place for I think over a decade. I know that's a fact with the school system. I believe it's with the town as well. So Brian's a good guy. So
And that won't change because they're not,
yeah, we won't interrupt that in any way, shape, or form. So anybody that's in Londonderry that has a third-party supply contract when we launch our CCA, their contracts will remain intact and they will not be disturbed by launching the CCA. The CCA is only focused on those customers that are buying from Eversource on the default service product.
If there's an existing contract with a power supplier, they're not given the option.
Correct.
Until that contract runs out.
That's right.
Correct.
Then they can opt in.
However, if the contract with the supplier has no penalties, that customer can opt out anytime and then join you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've heard things about Eversource not being ready, and it's kind of delayed the implementation in some other communities. Is Eversource at this point in time ready to go when we're ready to go?
So my take on this, just my personal opinion, is that Eversource has been doing this for a long time, just over the border in Massachusetts, and I don't believe that the delays are Eversource's fault.
You mentioned rebate, something that's not too big here in New Hampshire, but, so for example, in some of the municipalities in Massachusetts, I think the latest one's the heat pump rebate, and things
Yep.
like that. If we were to institute it, I don't know, through Eversource or our legislator, is that something Eversource would handle, or you would handle, or how does that work if rebate programs happen?
So
Energy savings and things like that.
yeah, I'd say overall that's something that's going to take place outside of this aggregation. There's a couple things that are being worked on that will hopefully change over the years, where we could implement some sort of a large-scale group net metering or low moderate income solar program that gets built into a reduced rate for your CCA for participating customers. That's something that we've had conversations with the DOE about, but we would need a legislative change most likely to get through. But that would be an exciting vehicle, moving forward. we've talked in the past with Londonderry about other options in terms of building in programs, efficiency programs, or EV charging station costs into this program. That's something that, in talking with the town council in the past, they like to have as an option, but something that they didn't want to move forward with necessarily. But there are a number of towns in Massachusetts that build in rates to update their LED lamping on their streetlights and things like that through putting an adder on the CCA program. So.
Is there any type of net metering calculator available out there that, the citizens with a solar array on the roof, they could go off and start thinking about what they want to do?
Tied into the CCA program specifically, or?
Yeah, tied into the CCA program.
Well, yeah, I mean, so as Stuart mentioned, that's an area where there's a lot of unknown right now. And basically, where you really run into the issue is the export of solar, right? So let's say at your home, you're putting back, 500 kilowatt hours a month, and right now EverSource reimburses you at the standard offer rate for those exports. If you were to join this program, it's entirely possible you get nothing for those exports, and so the program would be a detriment for you at that point in time. So we're trying to work with the DOE, the PUC, and the utility companies to figure out a way that we can hold those customers harmless. But right now, there's a significant amount of education that's going to have to go in specifically to those customers that have solar on their roof, because if you're not exporting, you're in a fine position. But if you are exporting, we would recommend that you do not enter the program. And so part of our issue with EverSource is we need the data in terms of who has solar on their roof, who's net metering, and that has been an issue that has yet to be resolved. And they say, well, geez, after you start serving, we'll give you that data. Well, at that point in time, the customers have been harmed, so we need to figure out how to resolve that before that happens. So
The town knows who has solar because there's a town credit, or whatever you want to call it, rebate to their property tax for the solar installation. And it comes off the assessment, not the tax itself. So the town knows who has solar as long as the owner of the solar installation, ask for the credit to his assessment. So the town knows.
Yeah, and there's two parts of it. So Bart mentioned one of them is just the fact that EverSource isn't providing some of the basic information around those customers. But the second part, that's a tougher nut to crack, which is the fact that in an excess gen situation, when you have a supplier in place that is not EverSource, EverSource is they're not providing that kWh generation to the supplier. They're retaining it. So that supplier is not in the position to provide a credit to a net metering customer because they're not receiving the excess generation. That's going to be a real challenge to overcome, quite honestly.
What about renewable energy credits? Is anybody getting credit for those? Or is anybody selling those? The producer that's offering option 2 that's 50% renewable or whatever it is. And does our arrangement with community aggregation in any way profit from, get affected by the sale of renewable energy credits?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So the renewable energy credit, so for example, you're thinking ahead toward the town itself having a solar project?
No, I'm, right now, so Joe Sixpack is on the program. He opts, assuming we offer that option, he opts for the 50% renewable package.
So
Somewhere there's been renewable energy generated. It should also create credits for someone. Is it for the producer?
Yeah,
Is it for Joe?
yeah, so in that scenario, for the household that opts for the 50% or the 100%, the supplier would purchase and then retire credits on behalf of that homeowner in order to give them the claim that they are in fact buying 50% or 100%. So I think where the confusion was is if, let's say you're buying from the town of Londonderry's solar array, in that scenario, the town could then go and, in order to not just buy the solar, but then claim its green attributes, would then retire the renewable energy credits associated with that array as well. So there are two different ways that the community could benefit from renewable energy credits.
But before the town builds its solar array, when next December, when we've got this in place and somebody's buying the package that includes renewable energy, there's no cash flow coming to that individual for the renewable energy credits that are associated with the renewable energy that he's buying, right?
Yeah, there's no cash credit going to that customer. So that customer is electing a renewable product of 50%. As Bart described, the supplier is obligated to buy renewable credits
Right.
to align with that customer's load, and those credits are it's sort of a misname. They're not credits, they're certificates. So the supplier is retiring those certificates. There's no financial credit given to that customer.
Right.
So, the customer's paying a premium for those certificates, and then the supplier retires the certificates on behalf of that customer, those customers that choose that product.
Thank you.
So the town's contract with Freedom ends in January 2025,
Yes.
right? Year and a half from now. What happens then?
I hope that you would renew with us. If we're in a contract at that point in time, let's say that we've entered into a 2-year contract in 2024, and that contract with Constellation expires in 2026. We would provide you services all the way through the expiration of that contract. And if you chose at the beginning of 2025 to move on to another consultant, we would hand the baton off to them as soon as the last contract that we put in place for you expired, so that you would have a seamless transition.
And if we wanted to get out of the contract next month, what happens then?
If you wanted to get out of the contract next month, I would refer you to the early termination portion of the contract.
Which says,
That if you move forward with anybody during the course of the contract period, that you would owe us our fees.
okay. That's the way I read it. I'm just trying to confirm.
Any other questions from the committee?
Can I ask a question on the agreement, or did you want to do that separately?
Go for it.
There's, under the agreement, there's like 14 tasks that are to be provided by the two companies. Of the 14, I think I counted 8, the verb starts assist this, assist that, assist the other thing. But really, we're looking for what you called earlier turnkey.
Yes.
So, is it assist or is it do?
No. Certainly, our experience and your experience will be that everything you would like us to take on, we will. I think we chose to use the term assist because we can't make any final decisions or determinations for the town of Londonderry. We assist you in making a selection of the program. We assist you in formulation of your aggregation plan. We assist you in going on public access television and educating your rate base. So that's why we chose the term assist is because, we are here to fulfill all those obligations, but you do have some towns that choose not to use us for certain features, and that's their prerogative. But everything that you would like to put on our plate, we are more than happy to take on and contractually are responsible for. So this is meant to be completely revenue neutral to the town of Londonderry, meaning no taxpayer dollars are allotted to this, and this is also meant to not hinder or call for any resources in terms of town staff once this has been launched. And that's why, we make certain for our customers that we're posted on not only our websites, but make sure that we're posted all over the community's websites, gathering points, so that once this does launch, we try to make sure that there's as few phone calls going to the town offices as possible for for help. We leave pamphlets in the town hall as well. Anything we can do, like I said, to minimize any need for town staff and resources to be allotted to this program. And once it's up and running, once we get past that first contract, you'll find that really the involvement of this committee or the town manager or town staff really minimizes to the point where it becomes on autopilot. It becomes second nature for the residents and ratepayers in this community. They really understand the program, their neighbors understand the program, and it gets much, much easier after the first iteration.
I have a question. Is the opt-out nature versus an opt-in nature, is that a requirement for these programs, or is that just the way you prefer to do business?
Well, actually,
I mean, I know opt-in is more difficult. Absolutely understand that.
yeah.
But is that,
So the legislation authorizes opt-out.
Okay.
But technically speaking, if the town wanted to do opt-in, there is nothing in the legislation that prohibits you from doing that. Opt-in has actually been authorized in New Hampshire since 2001.
We were also provided the group member agreement that we signed with
Yes.
Freedom.
Yes.
It was, it was hard for me to understand. Could you just
Sure.
kind of go through why we needed to enter into this agreement?
Yes, so I just preface this by saying, before I begin, that this is a market only a legislature could create. So the fact that it doesn't make much sense is natural. It is essentially a free lunch. And what I mean by that is the program is meant to subsidize renewable generators in the state. And essentially, when a sub 1 megawatt, and now I guess sub 5 megawatt renewable or qualifying renewable generator, so hydro, landfill gas, wind, solar, when they enter into a group net metering contract, they need you as a municipal off-taker as their ticket to ride. In other words, for them to get paid by Eversource at the standard offer rate for their production, they need to show that if they produce 10 million kWh, they've got 10 million kWh of virtual offtake on the other side of the transaction. You're not technically buying any of the energy from these hydro dams, but they're saying thank you to you by giving you half a penny per kilowatt hour in rebate money for your participation in the program, because without you, they would not get access to the Eversource standard offer rates, which are quite healthy remuneration rates for these generators.
And that's what this agreement
sorry?
does?
Yes, so I approached the town with that agreement, I believe, in 2020 or 2021. Freedom Energy Logistics has the majority of hydro generation that qualifies for this program under agreement to administer this program for those hydro dams. So you're one of 40 or 50 municipal off-takers that we have in this program that receive rebate money as a result of just lending your usage to the program. And there's no requirement for you other than that you use electricity.
And it's such a small portion of our total demand that it's easy for us to meet. Is that the bottom line here?
So I believe when because you guys don't have a wastewater or water treatment facility like some of the other large towns of your size, I think you use about 1.5 or 1.7 million kWh annually. So, but for that 1.5 or 1.7 million kWh annually, you get rebate money of half a penny per kilowatt hour. So let's say that through your consultant, he gets you a electricity contract price of 9.5 cents. We nullify that 0.5 of it with the rebate money coming back to you. So two separate transactions, but it's a nice way to offset increasing energy bills.
Okay.
The school system has a separate contract and all.
Yes.
Would it make sense to include them into this scenario?
I would love to include the school system. I've reached out to the school system a few times, and I've not had any luck. But again, when I come knocking, I say I've got free money for you, and not many people believe me. So with trusted committee members reaching out and saying this hasn't been too bad for the town of Londonderry, we could certainly accommodate them.
Yeah, Paul, the way we're going to approach that is we'll let them know what we're doing.
I'm just asking.
Yep, nope, so, yeah, we'll let them know what we're doing. Keep them abreast. Any questions for us?
Just, like I said, we've been here a few times, and I understand some of the frustrations with the history, but, our aim is to make this a wonderful, mutually beneficial relationship. Anything we can do to allay some of the concerns that you've voiced tonight, any information we can provide, we're happy to do so. But, we do think this is going to be, if you choose to move forward, a very advantageous program for the residents of Londonderry. The CCAs have had a long history of success in other states. The Attorney General in Massachusetts did a report a few years ago outlining some of the negatives of the private marketplace, but one of the shining areas was the community choice aggregation. And, whether it's seniors or whoever, the fact that you have the control to negotiate these contracts and put in the consumer protections is a real leg up versus what your residents and ratepayers have dealt with since the dawn of regulation in New Hampshire. So I do think this program will be beneficial and over the long term certainly demonstrate some significant savings. Not as significant as the last couple of years, but
No, I understand, I understand. And I thought I heard you say it, but did you have to, off the cuff, an estimate of how many kilowatt hours a town like Londonderry uses per year?
So I'll have to go back and look at my numbers, but I believe you'd probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 50 to 70 million kWh.
Okay.
And again, I have to estimate for who's on standard offer service, who's on third-party supply. A lot of your businesses that would take that, if you look at like the Eversource numbers about like how many kilowatt hours are served in town, a lot of the major businesses are already on third-party supply contracts, so they wouldn't count towards the program. So once we get that data, once we furnish our request to Eversource and get that, we'll be able to narrow that down in
Yeah,
terms of.
something, an order of magnitude is all I'm looking for.
Okay.
However, those businesses could join our.
They could. I just, just history would dictate, in that scenario, that you're probably not going to get significant commercial participation outside of those customers that are either new to town and haven't made a selection yet, or customers that are having credit issues.
Fair enough.
I thought,
Or small business.
Yeah, perfect for small business, yeah. So pizza shops, laundromats are perfect for this program and benefit just as much as the residents.
Right.
so who can, by law, who cannot be in an aggregation program?
So right now, under New Hampshire law, the only communities that cannot participate are those that are lighting districts like Templeton. So your Ashlands, your Littletons, your Wolfboroughs cannot participate. But outside of that, every other community, whether it's Eversource, the Co-op, Unitil, or Liberty, are able to participate.
But I mean, within Londonderry, which, are there any Eversource customers, meters, that can't participate?
So only those meters that are currently on third-party supply are ineligible. So anybody that's got a contract in place, anybody that's on standard offer service, unless you can think of anything else, everybody else is eligible. It's a universal access program, so it's made to ensure that everybody that wants to can participate.
Good, thank you.
So the way we're organized is we have a subcommittee dealing with specifically with energy issues, and that subcommittee is going to be taking this task on. I think we have some spirited debate coming up. I think in general, from what I've heard from other communities, Hudson, Keene, it's a very beneficial program. Once you get through all the hurdles, the community notification, public hearings, things like that, I think my sense is the citizens really like the program, and I think it's something that we need to move forward doing this type of program in the town of Londonderry. I think we can make a big impact to the citizens. So, with that said,
Last question. Can you provide references for communities that you've done this with?
Yeah, certainly.
yep, and if you could get us the plans that you use for Lincoln and Hampton,
Yep.
and if you have any kind of data on savings, going back to, I think, the first question, I
Yeah.
think that's
Yep.
going to be a huge contributor to the success of this project.
Yeah, that'll make the debate very easy.
Yep,
Okay.
Can I just add one thing?
absolutely.
The advantage that you seem to be offering with just doing Londonderry as opposed to Community Power, where they've aggregated many towns together, is that we will have more control over this whole thing.
Yeah, so there's twofold, right? So one is certainly the local control, I think, is a big advantage for our program because Londonderry can do what Londonderry wants to do without any buy-in from a committee or a group of towns that get voting rights that are in line with the community size. So that's number one. I do think that you're going to find that cost is going to be a significant factor in our favor as time moves on because of the fact that we're simply consulting and adding our small fee on top of whatever that baseline supplier rate is, and we're working with billion-dollar organizations. CPCNH, as they move forward and they want to become their own power supplier, that's a significant amount of cost and overhead that have to be borne by their member communities. And I think that's a significant lift for these small towns coming together. And I do think that will bear itself out over the next few years as to how far a bridge that is to cross.
The other, I mean, candidly, the other thing that makes me nervous, quite honestly, with it, I mean, so Bart mentioned that prior to my joining Colonial Power Group, I spent a better part of 16, 18 years working for competitive suppliers. So we, with the two companies I worked with, we were very active in the New England market. We're one of the larger companies in the region. The ISO market is terrifying. Tremendous risk to supply load in New England. It's not California. It's not like any other region in the country. You got to know what you're doing if you're going to take on that market risk. And I think the coalition has put a really good foot forward. I think they've hired some good talent. They've got some good vendors working for them. It still makes me nervous. What you're provided by working with a single large supplier that we're going to bring to the table, these are multi-million-dollar companies with large balance sheets. They're working throughout the country. They have, depth of experience with the New England market. They've got the financial wherewithal that if there's a hiccup in the market, they can withstand it. And a hiccup in the New England market can be devastating. ISO New England gives you no latitude. You fail to make a financial assurance payment, you're done. You're done tomorrow. That really makes me nervous about a brand new power coalition in New Hampshire. I'm being very candid.
Okay. And you've dealt with Eversource before?
Yes.
You're Massachusetts. Okay. That's I'm done.
So, 3 years ago, I look at what they do as going back whatever it was, 4. I went to some of the meetings that when the town looked at this, and this is all evolving, they said, we don't want to do staff. We need to bring in consultants. We need to bring people or experts to manage us. And I think that's exactly what you're representing for us to do. They're here to aggravate us.
Oh. Not aggregate us?
In a good way.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for your
much.
time tonight.
Very insightful.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
And with that, we can move on to our administrative board work. Feel free to stay for our administrative board work if you'd like.
I hear my wife calling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't have minutes yet of May and July to approve. I got the copy you sent out today.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't had a chance to go through and look at it, so we'll vote on those.
Did everybody get it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll vote on those
No problem.
in September.
Again, comments, just let me know. Can everybody do me a favor, though? Could you move these a little closer?
Absolutely.
Because I couldn't tell a lot of times who was speaking because it was so soft. I couldn't, like, when I got over there, it was like, well, you two in the end, I know. So, if you don't mind. So if there's any mistakes, let me know right away, okay?
Discussions with staff, so we have no staff here tonight to discuss with. Mike had a conflict come up, so he apologizes. He'll be at our next meeting. Anything from the State House? Mr.
No,
Rupp?
we're on vacation right now. Yeah, July and August, we're off. We don't go back until after Labor Day, so there's nothing.
You're not on a study committee, Ron?
All legislators are asked to take July and August off.
You got the budget done early.
Yeah.
Well, you get paid so much.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Your pay is reflected in your vacation, so.
Absolutely, give me thinking.
Even the per diem is lacking.
The one thing I will say is that if anybody has any bills that they want in, the week after Labor Day, we have to put those bills in. It can only be a title if you want. If you have a whole bill, you can present that to me. But if you just have an item that you want to suggest, we can put a title in and work on it. But it has to be submitted by that Friday after Labor Day.
By that Friday, so we can submit it now up to that Friday.
They can't submit it yet. It's the Monday after Labor Day until that Friday. It's very specific. It's 5 days. Because then the Senate has a week to do their bills, and
Okay.
there's not a lot of staff at the State House that's helping us with this, though.
yeah,
But they work very hard.
okay.
Okay, moving on to the committee rules of procedure. So Ann was the one who had not had a chance to review them at our last meeting. I got no feedback from her for this meeting. I would like to vote on adopting them or making any amendments.
No amendments.
No amendments.
Move to adopt for purposes of discussion.
Got a motion?
So moved?
I second that.
So
Right.
discussion?
Non-discussion.
Move to accept by acclamation?
So there is no discussion? You made a
Just
motion?
have a vote.
Okay, make a motion to accept? I'll accept a motion to accept.
So moved?
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And we have official rules of procedure. I have a copy I'm going to ask the vice chairman and the secretary to sign, as well as I will, and we'll post those on our website. And that's great, thank you for that. The last topic is subcommittee structure and membership. I proposed last meeting, based on a suggestion that Jeff made, that we reduce the number of committees, we increase the number of committee members per committee. I did send out a structure. I don't know if there's any discussion on that. Martha and I have had some brief discussion on the solid waste and sewer committee and on the cable, TV and internet, and we've switched roles. But other than that, I haven't got any feedback. I think it's a good idea. I think it's going to, looking at our aggregation presentation tonight, I think we need 5 people to work that project. We have some projects coming up that are big, and I
Yeah.
think we need more than 3 people.
Concentrate on those.
Yep, yeah, and to concentrate on those too, and I, Martha and I had a discussion about the sewer and solid waste and the cable TV and internet, and, my take is, when problems come up there, we'll address the problems, but I think the biggest tasks facing us, the biggest issues facing us are in energy and water, and I think that's really, where we should be focusing our efforts going forward. So I'm not expecting to see a monthly cable TV and internet subcommittee meeting.
No, but I do think that sewer may interact with water as we move along. They are talking about doing some sewer projects, so.
I guess I would entertain that discussion. I know. Yeah.
You understand what I'm talking about?
Yep.
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 The only
That's
difference would be
if they
that
do combined pipelines.
sewer kind of self-funds itself. So the water, we'd have to put the money up front, where the sewer, the users would pay for it. So that's the only difference that would come up if you combine them, is that, if you're a user of the sewer system, you get a bill and you basically pay for your usage.
Correct.
Where the water, we're gonna have to pay to start it.
Correct.
So what's the difference, though, if the piping isn't there? Who's gonna fund that piping to get it there? I know what you're going with that. So I see an issue where water and sewers comes together
Yeah.
for open pipeline work, just like we did when we did the when I was cable chairman. We had to make sure the make-build process was in conjunction with the phone lines, internet, and electricity. So then it all does become intertwined. So that's, when it comes up, we can address it, that's all.
Yes. Very good.
So, Jeff, something? Looks like you have a question.
I'm not sure if this is where it goes. I don't think it is, but on the Facebook page, we haven't really done anything since we created it
Okay,
and had like.
let's come back to
Good,
that.
thank you. I didn't think this was.
Yeah, let's come back to that.
The one thing that we did the switch.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, I'm fine with that.
So you two made a switch, all the rest stay the same?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, I'll send, so if everybody is in agreement, I'd like to take a motion to accept the subcommittee structure and membership.
Are we gonna look at sewer or not?
Oh, we are, but
Not a focus.
it's not a focus until there's a specific issue in front of us to look at.
As long as we realize there's a lot coming forward, there's a lot happening right now. And, it's fine to say that it's gonna be covered by user fees, but when you're talking about expanding potentially South Londonderry and other places, there could be potentially more than just user fees.
Yeah, so that requires a lot more discussion, and I'm not sure we're ready to have that. We could have that with the town manager, I think, anytime we want to, but, that's dictated by statute and town charter and things like that, how the sewer system is funded and managed, and we would have to do that differently. Have to come up with some method of doing it differently if that's where we go. I think that's down the road. I think right now, we have some water issues. The sewer, I understand there's some concern about the sewer going up Hardy Road and the substation at the corner of Hardy and Gilcrest.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but I think that's, at least in the eyes of this committee, I think we need to stay on top of it, but the decisions have been made there prior to us being formed, and I think that project is going forward.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mike
it
can,
is.
Mike can update us on that, right? Because that's the one for the complex going
Yep.
to the substation, yeah, okay.
Yep.
I thought there was a water pump.
It's both.
Yeah.
Water pump station, sewer pump station, basically in the same area, which is going to require a lot of impact on a lot of people. And I think it's very important, but, if everybody says the decision's already been made and we got nothing to say about it, I don't know.
So so I think one of the things that this subcommittee can do is if there's a topic you want to go off and take a look at, by all means, do it. It's, once again, we have a limited amount of resources. We have 10 very qualified people sitting on this committee.
Right.
What do we want to tackle?
Well, I absolutely agree that the power, electricity, and the water are the primary things that we should be focused on.
At this point in time, yeah, at this point in time. So what I'm trying to do is just maximize the efficiency of the people we have, understanding that we're all volunteers.
Sure.
Getting paid almost as much as Ron gets paid. Not quite, but almost.
Within a couple of $100.
Yeah. So if we're good with the subcommittee structure, I'd like to vote to approve it. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a subcommittee structure. Perfect.
2.0.
Yeah, 3.0. So, moving on, subcommittee discussions, energy. We have not had an energy subcommittee meeting. I think we met with Twin States last meeting. I think from a subcommittee standpoint, the subcommittee needs to make a recommendation on Twin States based on what we know today. Either make a recommendation, ask for additional information, but figure out a way to move forward with that topic of telling the town council what we think needs to be done with that. And then obviously, community power aggregation, which I think is a big topic. From what I'm learning is it's gonna take a lot of work to make it happen, but I think it's gonna be very beneficial for the town. I'm not gonna say we're going to go ahead with Freedom. I don't think, there's 3 companies or 3 players in this field in New Hampshire right now. Well, we may need to just take a step back for a month or so to understand what the differences are.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've heard good things about all 3 players. Everybody brings a little something different to the table, so it's really kind of what are we looking for? 3 good things may be the wrong term, but I haven't heard anything bad said about any of the
A
players.
little confused. We have a contract with them.
We have an opt-out contract with them,
We have an opt-out
with them,
without penalty?
without penalty. We can't,
I
well,
missed that part.
there's
No,
a
no,
penalty.
no.
No, I didn't
There
think
is a
so.
penalty.
A big one.
But the thing I'll say is, that's part of what the decision has to be made. Do we go forward with what we have, or do we want to pay the penalty and go somewhere else? Is it worth it to do that? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's been a question that's been asked.
Is it really? I didn't know the committee was being asked that question. I thought we were made on the assumption we're gonna go forward with this company unless we have an objection because they're not fulfilling the contract.
No, there's more than one interpretation of that contract too. Some, I'll do it the way we always did it in negotiations. Some believe and others believe. So some believe that we could just give them the, what is it, a 3, 5, 6 months notice, I guess, and be done with them. Others believe, and we heard it here tonight, that they would collect their fee for the duration of the contract.
Yes.
However, it would only be for a period of about a year, because the contract ends in early '25, and we're not gonna be buying electricity until early '24 probably.
Right, I
So
see that.
it wouldn't be a real painful penalty. So I think our options are open.
Yeah, so we do the math and make our recommendation.
Yep.
Unless Mike tells us opposite, I mean, he's legal
No,
counsel
no,
about what we
Mike-
do.
Mike's given us free rein to make
Okay.
what we think is the right choice. Whatever we do is gonna have to be reviewed by legal, absolutely.
Right.
Don't we have to make a recommendation to the town council?
That's
Right.
the ultimate,
Right.
that's the end goal.
Right, right. I mean, we're not making a decision, we're making a recommendation.
Oh,
Right.
right,
Right.
we're doing the homework.
Yeah.
We're doing the homework, town council gets the credit.
For free. We're doing it for
Or the
free.
blame. Just so you know, or the blame.
So I think the Energy Subcommittee's got a couple of fairly significant tasks ahead of it, so I'm kind of excited by that.
Lynn, question?
Yep.
So now you've divided up the water, the subcommittees and all that kind of stuff. For example, I'm not on the energy committee, right?
No, you're on water.
I'm on water. So what involvement do our non-committee members do? We just listen, we input, can we go to the meetings?
Do whatever you want.
That's what I- that's what I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Be actively involved as you want, but I don't think I got into this level of detail. I would listen to everything you have to say, but I'm not gonna say you would be making the formal, the formal decision to go forward with the next recommendation or the next step. You would be there as a consultant to the subcommittee.
I did not know that's how you were gonna structure it.
Yeah.
I did not know you were gonna structure it that way.
Right.
When this committee was formed, we all had equal votes. Now you're telling us we don't. And I have a problem with that.
No,
No.
you're misunderstanding, I think.
I am, maybe I am.
At the subcommittee, the
Yeah.
subcommittee's let's take the example, the energy subcommittee is gonna make a recommendation on aggregation to the full committee, at which each of our, we members all have an equal vote.
Perfect. I thought you said recommendation. I thought you meant to the council.
No.
I think
That's what you thought too? Okay.
you omitted the word sub, or the
Okay.
syllable sub.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you.
No. So the idea is for the subcommittee to do the work, right?
Yep,
And
we got
then-
plenty of work to do, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You got
And
it.
then the subcommittee presents to this committee
Right.
for consideration, and then this subcommittee decides as. the
This
full
committee.
This committee decides, yes, thank you. as the full committee, what we want to do.
We got lots to do.
What we want to recommend.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Penny Chuck still owes us a pumping station from 6 years ago, right? They're short one pump. They're supposed to have, never mind, we'll get that to the water committee.
So the water subcommittee had a meeting on Saturday.
We had a
Had
conversation.
a conversation.
We have some questions we want to ask. We'll send them to you tonight or tomorrow morning. Basically, it's collecting prior art from the city on water planning and budgeting and the master plan for water. And then data on what projects are pending. You know, we talked about the $30 million pipe over the Merrimack. And then there's, discussion on the impact of Woodmont, sorry. So there's several things that are current and pending, projects that are current and pending. We want to get that, get our hands on that. And then, there's a couple questions we're going to ask, and then we're going to try to get a meeting an hour on Mike Malaguti's schedule. And if we can get the president of the town council, that'd be great. But primarily Mike Malaguti, we can have two meetings sometime in the next two business weeks. To sit down, what are his biggest concerns, what is bothering him, what's keeping him up at night, just to get a feel for where he's going so we can, start pushing forward on some of these things.
Sure.
Make sure that we're answering.
I can tell you what keeps us up at night is how are we gonna pay for it?
Yeah, that's,
That's what keeps us up at night. Like,
Yeah,
that's what, we actually just had Mike and myself just met with the Speaker of the House and with Senator Carson to discuss finances. The finance of this is what's gonna keep us up, because it's in the neighborhood of $200 million.
Yep.
So,
It's no good if the pipe even falls short by 10 feet,
so,
right?
yeah, there's lots of discussions about, do you go to the voters and ask them for $2 million, $10 million? Do you ask them for $200 million, you get a better rate? These are all the different things that are being considered.
Which bond, how long, how
Right.
much?
If you do a $200 million bond, you get a better rate, but you also have to sell that to the voters. So that's what keeps us up at night.
$5,000 per person.
It-
200 for about 40,000 people in this,
27.
so maybe 10,000, well, 7,500-ish per person.
And you have to think about what's the duration? You want to do this
What is
over
the
10
200
years,
million?
or
Is that
15, or
getting-
20?
Hold on, is
Yeah.
the 200 million, is that getting, and again, we don't want to monopolize the conversation.
Yeah.
But is that providing municipal water hookups to every single house in the city of London?
If they choose to. Remember, they can still opt out
No, I understand.
if they
but
don't
it's-
want it.
But that 200 million is about the cost to run pipes to everybody in London.
Yeah, and I think that was, what I'm being told, about $200 million.
But I've already got pipe water, why do I want to pay again?
That's another issue we have is
Right.
the homes that already have existing
where I'm
water.
Right, I
You know,
paid $3,000 a hookup.
How do we
Thank
get them
you.
to buy in to say,
Good well.
are you gonna contribute to this? It's another factor that we've been discussing is people that already have water, how are they gonna be willing to help other people that don't have it?
Well, wait a minute, if you're going to dig up the ground, why don't you just put the sewage pipe in with it?
Well, then it's probably 400 million.
Yeah, so that's the conversation
Yeah.
we want to have.
Yeah.
It's because it's, well, that's the conversation we want to have. We want to make
Yeah.
sure that we understand the biggest concerns.
What year dollars are you talking?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's gonna go up every,
That was the question, exactly. That was good.
it's gonna go up every time, so.
Yeah.
Did I miss a meeting, invite us something?
A conversation, we'll have we'll talk after this meeting.
Okay.
After this.
Yeah, because they were already on a smaller water committee
old-
before
had a
we got
three-person
on.
water
Oh, okay.
committee, and then,
I just wanted,
yeah, we'll talk right after this.
Anything else out of the meeting worth talking about?
No. The article on the PFAS that you've asked us to put together, it's, Ann is finishing it up. She
Perfect.
wants to submit it to this group, or submit it to the water committee for review, and then we'll submit it to this committee for final review, and then we'll put it either to the newspaper or to the Facebook or to the.
Or
town.
both.
Or both.
Everywhere. Yep.
Yeah, everywhere.
Great,
So that's in process. It should be done, I'm told, promptly.
great.
Okay.
And nothing from the sewer solid waste committee or the cable TV internet, I assume, no? Okay, moving on, roundtable discussion. Ron, anything?
I'm good.
Ray?
I'm good.
Yeah, so this is the Facebook, we have the Facebook page up and we haven't done anything with it for like 2 months. What I'd like to do, and since I'm the person that created it, I guess I'm the Facebook guy. What would like to do is do a sort of a summary of these meetings, you know, what we talked about, then submit it to Lynn, and then we can, I know we're not supposed to have meetings on email, but I submit a summary to you, and then if, whatever the process is to approve that, to post, is like, yeah, we had a meeting and this is what we talked about, and that's it. Not the meeting, not the minutes, but just like a paragraph. If we think that's appropriate.
Take a shot at it. Let's see what it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what it looks like.
Yeah. Because I want to make sure that, because if you don't post anything, there's no tempo, and people won't look at it,
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, I think that we should do a
We gotta put
post
an artic-
after every meeting.
We gotta do an article in the paper that says, oh, by the way, there's a webpage.
Yes,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, we are.
Well, we're doing
Yes.
this PFAS. I think,
Right.
you know, my wife keeps pulling out the Londonderry Times articles about us. So I think, you know, if the Londonderry Times is taking the information that we discuss and creating an article, we you know, we're smart. We can do something similar to
Yes, she
that.
is.
And at an absolute minimum, we can link to that article in the Londonderry Times. At an absolute minimum.
Right.
You know, and I guess, is it appropriate to, I guess you're the one that asks for, proposes a question. Can we discuss now that, you know, if Londonderry Times has an article about this meeting, can we just post that? Or should I find it, highlight it, send it to you, and then,
I hate to say it, but we shouldn't, I guess, plagiarize the Londonderry Times, and even
No, I'm just
putting
saying link to it.
putting a link on the public website, I'm not sure is advisable.
Yeah.
It'd be far better for you to do the little extra work.
That's fine,
And,
yeah.
you know, create your own summary. I can guarantee it'll be more succinct than what you find in the Times. And then, you know, we can post that, and that can just be done on Lynn's authority as the
Yeah.
chairman. We're not making any decisions,
No.
making any policy.
yeah. All right, I'll take a crack at it, and I'll send it to Lynn.
Yep.
And then we can at least start getting some content on there and get some sort of operating tempo, so people can start seeing what's going on and what we're thinking about, and see that we're adding value.
And what I found with the solid waste Facebook page is we share it to all. We're linked is the wrong word, but you know, we share that to 8 or 10 different community sites that are out there, Londonderry Moms, LondonderryNH.net, or Londonderry NH. There's a bunch of sites out there.
Yeah.
And we just share it right to those.
Jeff, I can help you with that.
That'll be great. We'll talk
Okay.
after this.
And that's more powerful than getting membership or members coming into the
Yeah.
utilities committee.
we can go viral.
Facebook page. Yep. No, and it works out well. I've gotten some really good feedback from
Yeah,
the
no,
information we
you
put
do.
out.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
But that way you're gonna get.
Reaches a
3,000,
lot of
4,000,
people.
5,000 people.
Right.
Perfect.
We on the water committee, if we want to make contact or ask for a meeting, for instance, with the town manager, do we have to, what would be that procedure?
We send an email to them.
So you could either have me set the meeting up. I don't have a problem if you have a designated chairman on the subcommittee, if you want to set it up and let me know about it, but we do have to put a notice out that we are having the meeting. If we're gonna have a quorum.
And Kirby will do
Well,
that.
Well, say it's just one person having a meeting
Then
with
just go
the
talk to
town
Mike.
manager.
Go talk to Mike. I don't want
Right.
to know about it.
Okay,
You're going as a citizen. You're not going as a committee.
okay.
Yep.
But we can bring whatever information we got from that meeting with
Could-
Mike back to our little
Could-
subcommittee.
could-
Okay.
Could more than one person on the water committee be at that meeting?
Two, but not
Yeah.
three.
Has to be listed.
Two.
But not
If
three.
you have 3, you have a quorum.
Okay,
Two
but
or
two
less.
could,
Yep.
and the town manager,
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
Yep, and that was another reason to increase the membership, because before,
Made the
2 people
quorum.
were a quorum.
Right.
Yeah.
So it got complicated fast. It's complicated enough as it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ron, you have the same rules at the house?
We do.
No wonder we can't get stuff done.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm good, thanks.
Martha?
I'm good.
I'm very good.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I will close this by saying, when we set up this meeting, the first meeting, we voted on leadership for 6 months. And next month is 6 months.
No way.
Yep. So our first meeting was in April. And so we will be voting on our, the chairman, the vice chairman, and the secretary's position next month. So, I'll kind of say, you know, where I'm coming from. I probably make things too complicated than I should, but I think myself, Martha, speaking for Martha and speaking for John, we're certainly interested in continuing on. If somebody has some different ideas, they want to take the committee in a different direction, far be it from me to get in their way if that's the way the committee wants to go. But we will be voting on leadership at our next meeting. And that'll be the first course of business, because we can't continue on without, because this is officially my last day as the leader. I'm gonna go out and have
You didn't read the fine print about the fine print about until death do you part in the contract you signed?
I'm gonna go have a beer.
So will these be one-year terms?
So they will be, they're 3-year term. Oh, they'll be, every year we'll have to vote.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So-
Yeah, I mean,
so
I
my
know
hearing-
we were 3-year terms, but the office
The
holders
officers
are
are
1 year.
1 year, yeah.
So I'm hearing that the current officers are willing to continue in those roles.
Yeah.
We're willing to continue in our
Yes,
current
Absolutely wonderful
roles.
job. No, I think you've done a wonderful job from my perspective.
So thank you for that. And
Okay.
I think we're finally getting rolling, in my opinion. I think, we've got some rules down, we've got some structure down. I think we've got a couple of tasks ahead of us that are really important, and I think that can really benefit the citizens of the town. So I'm excited to go forward.
And we don't have to worry about it being sunsetted.
You always have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
But once again, you got the guy on your left. It'll be his fault if we do.
Yes.
Two sort of technical things I learned. It's not really, I'll just help. I had no problem finding the actual recordings, because when you send it from your own account, it links that to your account, and I was getting a 404 error, and I finally figured out how to find it. But there is a place where all these are recorded and stored, and it's through the cable page and down through, and I'll just maybe just send a mail out and say, oh, by the way, for information. Now, that's a question. If I want to send out a piece of information that says, by the way, if you want to find the video audio recordings, you can go to here, do I have to send it to you?
No, just send, but BCC everybody.
So that was the next thing. There is a drop down for BCC. I always copy Lynn, and then that's what I did for the minutes.
Yep.
When you type in somebody's name, if you want to search, there's a thing that'll pop up and it'll search anybody in Londonderry, New Hampshire.org, whatever it is.
Yep.
And it'll pop up. If you want, then you can add them to your contact list and just say, I call it @BCC.
Yeah.
So, okay, just in case.
Yeah, and so, you may have said this, and I apologize if you did, but you can also set up just a group.
Yeah, a group,
Group
right.
address.
Right.
And I just do that.
I said contact, I'm sorry, I meant group, yes.
Okay, yeah.
You drive your contact into your group and away you go.
Yep, perfect. So it works out good. And we all have, I can't confirm with Ann yet, but we all have.
Well, I brought her hard copy. I brought her hard copies.
Yeah.
But I think we're all set up with town email addresses, and so we're good to go with that.
Perfect.
Good. And with that, I have no further business. Oh, yeah, the next meeting is September 5th. I'll have a new son-in-law by then.
Oh, congratulations.
So we have a wedding coming up on September 2nd, our first daughter getting married.
Oh, congratulations.
Ching. I'm sorry.
I know.
I was gonna ask, does Dad approve of the son-in-law?
Very much. Okay, he's a good guy.
Good.
Good guy. So with that, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.